Hello, ladies and gentlemen. What's going on? Welcome back. This is Force, and here today I'd like to talk with you about single-player campaigns in FPS games and the noticeable lack of them in a lot of AAA releases over the past few years. Now, the reason I'm talking about this today is because I spent the afternoon playing Rainbow Six Siege, and I more or less enjoyed it. I remember playing and enjoying the alpha for what it was, and I said, I can't wait till this game gets a lot more stuff. Well, the game released, and, there's more operators, and there are more maps, but it still feels a little thin. And I think thin is a common word used to describe a lot of these most recent FPS releases that haven't had single-player campaigns, among other things. Let's take a look at some examples. Titanfall, and Evolve, Star Wars Battlefront, now most recently Rainbow Six Siege, and coming up next year, well, we're going to have Overwatch. Now, there are some multiplayer shooters that can thrive very well standalone, by themselves, just as a multiplayer shooter. For many, many years, it seemed quite obvious that people were just playing games like COD and Battlefield for their multiplayer aspect. In fact, there have been reports from the developers and the publishers saying only 10 to 20% of our player base even touch the single player campaign, let alone finish it. And that may certainly be true. And in fact, on some platforms, you can see trophy data that shows how much any given portion of the player base on that platform has completed certain achievements, including even playing the campaign. And yes, that points to a fairly low number. Fairly low, I say that, but again, what are we looking at? 10, 20, maybe 30% of your player base? Well, guess what? A lot of these games that are releasing without any single player component are basically telling those people that want that part of the game, don't buy it. And if those people aren't buying the game, what does that do to the player base? Well, it reduces the potential number of people who are gonna be actually even stepping into the multiplayer. Yes, it might be 70% of your potential player base who is just gonna play multiplayer, but those other 30, if they're not picking the game up because there's no single player, they're not even ever gonna join your potential multiplayer player base and people who are gonna be around for the long term. I mean, I guess it goes without saying, and I'm certain that when developers and publishers make the decision to cut single-player campaigns, they know this. I'm not telling anyone anything they're not already aware of. I assume that most of the people developing and publishing games are many times smarter than myself. I just sit here playing games and talking about them. But I think it's worth pointing out, and I think it's worth reminding people, maybe if you haven't thought about it recently. Now let's take a look at some recent examples of shooters that have launched without a single-player campaign. Titanfall and Evolve. Now let me ask you a question. When is the last time you heard anybody talking about either one of those games? Are you hearing crickets? Because I have been too. And we've got very recent releases of Star Wars Battlefront and now Rainbow Six Siege, neither of which have single-player campaigns. Now, Battlefront has this little wave defense thing that you can do, and Rainbow Six Siege has some fun little things. And the reason I'm even making this video is because this afternoon I spent some time playing the Situations and Terrorist Hunt. And these are both single-player things. In Terrorist Hunt, you can lone wolf and you just hunt terrorists, and depending on the difficulty, there's more of them, you die faster, whatever. And the Situations, it's sort of a tutorial because it takes you through the different operators and shows off the different things that you can do in the game, the different gadgets and whatnot. But at the same time, it felt like a light single-player. But unfortunately, that's all it felt like. And it just made me yearn for an actual fully fleshed out campaign. And in fact, all four of these games, Evolve, Titanfall, Battlefront, Siege, all four of these games, when I think about, when I imagine a potential campaign, it just seems, in my head, it's amazing. Titanfall, you've got these mechs and you could have these huge battles. They're punching each other and the world's being invaded by some garbage, and that could be cool. Evolve, an entire campaign where you're hunting the different monsters and there's a story and you get the story of each one of the hunters or whatever. Battlefront, I think it goes without saying how that could be an amazing campaign. It's freaking Star Wars after all. And then Siege, I imagine, I think about when I was a kid and I played the original Rainbow Six on PC, and I'm setting up these tactical invasions. I loved it. I absolutely freaking loved it. And although I got a little taste of what that could potentially look like in Rainbow Six Siege, an actual fully fleshed out campaign isn't there. It isn't. And that's a huge bummer. And again, it is going to reduce the potential player base. Titanfall and Evolve, nobody's talking about them. So I just have to assume that the player base has all but dried up. There's huge concern that the same thing is going to happen for Star Wars Battlefront, and now I'm thinking the same thing's going to happen to Rainbow Six Siege. Now, I don't want to count the chickens before the eggs hatch, but let's just 3 months from now come back to this video, let me know how both of those player bases are doing. I would not hesitate to put some money down on neither one of them doing so well. And it's not because they are just multiplayer only games. I think it's because it's that $60 price point. And the fact that nowadays games that launch at $60, that's not even the end of it. In many cases, within the first year, you're looking at spending $120. And I get the feeling that a lot of people are just getting fed up. And as the games get thinner and thinner at release, and more post-release content gets added that cost more money, and your base game isn't even as robust as base games were 5 or 10 years ago with multiplayer components, co-op components, and single-player components. I mean, hell, think of like the first couple of Gears of War. You had this huge single-player campaign, you had this wave-based survival thing, the Horde mode, and then you had the multiplayer, and all of that just cost you $60. I mean, come on. It's gonna reach. It has to be reaching a tipping point, and and it may already have. It may already have. If you look at these huge releases, these huge $60 releases, where the player bases just dry up within a couple of months. And you know what? I'm not sitting here and telling anyone what to do. If they want to, because a lot of people, they're gonna make their game. It's gonna sell a couple million. They made their money. They're going to start working on the next release. But if you treat your customer right, maybe they're much more willing to spend money on that DLC. Maybe they're much more willing to stick around with Evolve and Titanfall and buy all the shit that you want to release after the first couple of months. Maybe. But people are starting to feel like they're getting ripped off. I get the feeling that that's the case. I really do. And I don't come at this, again, I'm not going to tell people how to make their games, but I would be curious to see if in this alternate dimension, if any one of these games launched with a single-player campaign, what that would do to the base player base, how the average purchaser would feel about that purchase, if they were satisfied enough to stick around and spend that additional money. Maybe. Maybe not. I don't know. I'm not a fortune teller, but I'd love to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Please let me know. You know, at the end of the day, I was just really hoping in recently Battlefront and Siege, I think I would just, again, my brain reels at the possibilities of how cool those single player campaigns could have been for both of those games, but we'll never know because we live in this universe. And in this universe, the powers that be decided, you shall not have a campaign. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave your comments in the comment section below. Want to know what you guys think as well. And until next time, I'll see you later.